I spend most of my videos helping you make sure you do not run out of money. Today, I am going to do the opposite. Because for a lot of you, running out is not the real risk. Real risk is the one nobody warns you about, reaching the end of a long, careful life having never let yourself enjoy the money you worked 40 years to save. Study after study finds the same strange thing. Many retirees do not spend their savings down. Their balances keep growing into their 70s and 80s, and then the government and their heirs sort out what is left. If you saved well and you are still living like every day is a recession, this one is for you. The numbers are about to give you permission. Let me be clear before we start, because this is important. Running out of money is a genuine risk, and if you are behind, this is not your episode. This is for the careful savers, the disciplined ones, the people who did everything right and are now too afraid to spend a dime of it. If that is you, keep watching. Here is the thing about being a good saver. It is a skill, and you spent decades building it. Save more. Spend less. Delay the reward. Every raise, every windfall, every temptation, you trained yourself to put it away. Then you retire, and the world quietly asks you to do the exact opposite. And nobody hands you the instructions. Nobody ever teaches the reverse skill. How do you take a giant pile of money that took your whole life to build and turn it into a paycheck you spend without guilt? There is no class for that. So most people just keep doing the only thing they know how to do. They keep saving, they keep pinching. Treat the nest egg as a number to protect, not a resource to use. There is a comment I read once that has stayed with me. Man wrote, "It is so hard to go from saving to spending. I live like a student. I am 66 years old." 66, financially fine, living like a student. That is not a money problem. That is a permission problem. And that is what today is about. Let me show you it is real, not just a feeling. When researchers actually track what retirees do with their money, they keep finding the same surprising pattern. A large share of retirees, especially the ones who save diligently, do not draw their balances down over time. Balances hold steady, or they grow. Think about how strange that is. You spend 30 or 40 years building a nest egg specifically so you can spend it in retirement, and then in retirement you do not spend it. People with healthy savings routinely reach their 80s with more money than they had on the day they stopped working. Why does that happen? A few reasons stack up. The market keeps growing the pile faster than they draw from it. They are afraid to spend because no one told them how much is safe. And a lot of their income is already covered by Social Security and pensions, so the savings just sits there, compounding, untouched. The result is a slow-motion mistake that feels responsible the whole way through. Every year you underspend feels prudent. It is only at the very end, looking back, that you can see the trips not taken and the years lived smaller than you could have. I want to spend a minute on the why, because if you understand the fear, you can answer it with numbers. The first fear is running out. It is the deepest one. You imagine being 90, broke, and dependent, and that image is so frightening that you overcorrect 40 years to avoid it. It is a reasonable fear. We are going to measure it because a measured fear shrinks. The second fear is the market. You watched your balance drop in a bad year, and it felt like the floor fell out, so you keep a huge cushion to make sure it never happens again. Also reasonable, and also something we can plan around instead of hoard against. The third reason is not fear at all. It is identity. You have been the saver your whole life. Spending feels like being irresponsible, like becoming a different, worse person. That one is not about math, but naming it helps because you are allowed to let the identity evolve. Disciplined saver earned the right to become a confident spender. None of these fears are foolish. They kept you safe your whole life. The point of this episode is not to dismiss them. It is to put actual numbers next to them so you can see when they have done their job, and it is safe to relax your grip. Here is the first number that changes everything, and almost no plan accounts for it. Most retirement math assumes you will spend the same amount every year, adjusted up for inflation, forever. A flat, ever-rising line. But that is not how real people spend in retirement. Real spending looks like a smile. Early on, in what planners call the go-go years, spending is high. You are healthy, you are newly free, you travel, you eat out, you do the things you waited for, all at your late 60s into your 70s. Then, in the slow-go years, spending naturally drifts down. Not because of money, but because of energy. Big trips get shorter. You are home more, you simply want less. Real data shows household spending in retirement declining, in real terms, through the 70s and into the 80s. Late in life, spending often ticks back up for healthcare and care needs. That is the other side of the smile. Here is why this matters for permission. If you plan for a flat, rising line when your real spending is a declining smile, you are massively overestimating what you need. You are scaring yourself with a bill you will never actually get, and you are during the exact years, the go-go years, when spending would buy you the most joy and health. Plan for the smile, and a lot of you will find you have room to spend more right now when it counts most. Now let us deal with the 4% rule, because it is the single most misunderstood idea in retirement, and the misunderstanding is making people poorer than they need to be. You have heard it. Withdraw about 4% of your savings in the first year, adjust for inflation after that, and your money should last 30 years. Most people treat that 4% like a speed limit. Go over it and you crash. But look at where it came from. The rule was built by testing withdrawal rates against the worst market sequences in modern history: Great Depression, the stagflation of the 1970s. It answers one specific question: what is the most I could have withdrawn and still survive the worst case that has ever happened? That is a floor. It is a worst-case survival number, not a prediction of your likely retirement. And here is the part that should change how you feel. When researchers run the 4% rule across all the normal, non-catastrophic retirements, the typical outcome is not that you scrape by. The typical outcome is that you die with more money than you started with. In a large share of scenarios, following the 4% rule to the letter leaves you with double your starting balance at the end. Read that again. The rule designed to keep you safe in the worst case leaves the average person swimming in unspent money. 4% was never a ceiling on your life. For most retirements, it is a deeply conservative floor, and you have room above it. Here is a fact that turns hoarding from a virtue into a tax trap. If your money is in traditional pre-tax accounts, a traditional 401k or IRA, the government does not actually let you leave it alone forever. Starting at age 73 under current rules, you are required to take money out every year, whether you want it or not. It is called a required minimum distribution, an RMD, and the percentage you must withdraw rises every single year as you age. Every dollar of that forced withdrawal lands on your tax return as ordinary income. So the money you were carefully not spending gets pulled out anyway and taxed anyway on the government's schedule instead of yours. Think about what that means for the hoarder. You spend your 60s living small to protect the pile. Then at 73, the government starts marching the money out the door and taxing it. And if you still are not spending it, it just piles up in your regular brokerage account, having been taxed on the way out, waiting to be taxed again on its gains. So past a certain point, refusing to spend your pre-tax savings does not protect it. It just changes who decides when it comes out and hands a bigger slice to the IRS. You can either spend it thoughtfully on your own terms or have it forced out on theirs. Verify the current RMD age at irs.gov, because Congress has moved it before and may again. Let us follow the money all the way to the end, because this is where oversaving quietly betrays the very people you did it for. Say you succeed at hoarding. You die with a large traditional IRA still full. You imagine it passing cleanly to your kids. It does not. Under current rules, most non-spouse heirs, your adult children, have to empty an inherited IRA within 10 years. And every dollar they take out is taxed as their income. Here is the cruel timing. Kids are most likely to inherit in their 40s, 50s, or 60s, which are usually their own peak earning years, their highest tax bracket years. So the money you saved by living small gets dumped on top of their salaries and taxed at their highest rate. Run the picture. You skipped trips and lived like a student to protect that account. Then it lands on your daughter during the exact decade she earns the most, and a big chunk of it goes straight to the government instead of to her. That is the real cost of dying with too much in the wrong kind of account. It is not that your family gets a windfall. It is that the government gets a bigger share than it ever would have if you had spent thoughtfully, given while you were alive, or converted the money on your own terms. Oversaving, past the point of safety, does not maximize what your family gets. It often maximizes what the IRS gets. Verify the current inherited account rules, because this area changes. All right. I have spent 8 sections telling you that you can probably spend more. Now let me be responsible and tell you how to do it without ever putting yourself at real risk. Because the goal is not to spend recklessly. The goal is to spend the surplus, the money above your safety, on purpose. The whole plan rests on one idea we have talked about before: the floor. Divide your spending into 2 buckets. Your essentials, the things that must be paid no matter what: housing, food, utilities, insurance, healthcare. Everything else, the travel, the gifts, the restaurants, the joy. Step 1. And it is non-negotiable. Cover your essentials with guaranteed income that arrives no matter what the market does. For most people, that is Social Security, sometimes plus a pension or an annuity you choose to build. When your essentials are covered by a floor that cannot run out, something powerful happens. Your savings is no longer keeping you alive. It is funding your extras. A pile of money that only has to fund extras can be spent far more freely than a pile that has to keep you fed. Once your floor covers your essentials, spending the surplus is not reckless. It is the plan working exactly as designed. That is the permission, and it is built on math, not hope. Here is how to safely spend more than a rigid 4% without the risk that scares you. Problem with the fixed rule is that it never changes. You lock in a number on day one and follow it through booms and busts alike, which forces you to plan for the worst case every single year, even in the good years when there is no worst case in sight. A dynamic rule is smarter, and it is what a good advisor actually does. Spend a bit more in years when your portfolio is up, and you trim a bit in years when it is down. Some people use simple guardrails. If the balance grows past a certain point, give yourself a raise. If it drops past a lower line, you tighten for a while. Why does this let you spend more on average? Because you are no longer forced to hold back all the time to protect against a crash that mostly does not come. You respond to reality as it unfolds instead of bracing for disaster forever. Done right, a dynamic approach supports a higher average lifestyle than the fixed rule, with the same safety, because it flexes instead of freezing. You do not need a spreadsheet to start. Mindset alone is the shift. In a good market year, it is not just allowed to spend a little more, it is smart, because that is the surplus the system created for you to enjoy. This is the part I most want you to hear, and it is not really about money at all. $1 spent at 68 is not worth the same as $1 spent at 88, not because of inflation, because of you. At 68, you can climb the hill, carry the grandchild, take the long flight, dance at the wedding. At 88, with the same dollar, many of those things are simply off the table, no matter how much you are willing to pay. The go-go years are a window, and the window closes whether you spend or not, so spend them on purpose. Front-load the travel while your knees still work. Take the whole family somewhere while there is still a whole family that can go. If you want to help your kids, consider doing some of it now, while you are alive to see what it does. Watching your daughter buy her first home with your help, at 60, is worth more to you than her receiving a larger check at your funeral. The joy is the point, and the joy has an expiration date. This is not permission to be foolish. Your floor is covered, remember. This is permission to convert some of the surplus you already earned into the experiences and the help that were the entire reason you saved it in the first place. You did not save for 40 years to have the biggest possible balance on the day you die. You saved to be free. Being free means letting yourself use it. 2 specific moves turn the forced, taxed future into a controlled, generous one. Both are worth a conversation with a professional, and both are most powerful if you start early. The first is Roth conversions. In your lower income years, often the window between retiring and starting Social Security and RMDs, you can move money from a pre-tax account to a Roth. Pay the tax on it now at a low rate, and then it grows tax-free, with no future RMD on that money at all. You are voluntarily letting a little air out of the tax bomb before it goes off, on your terms, in a low bracket, instead of the government's terms in a high one. Second, for the charitably inclined, is a qualified charitable distribution, a QCD. From age 70 and a half, you can send money straight from your IRA to a charity, and counts toward your required withdrawal, but never shows up as your taxable income. If you give to a church or a cause anyway, doing it this way means the government subsidizes your generosity instead of taxing your withdrawal. Both of these do the same thing. They take money that was going to be forced out and taxed, and they turn it into spending or giving that you control. That is the theme of this whole episode. You can be the one who decides how your money is used, or you can leave it to the IRS and the calendar. Verify the current rules for both at irs.gov. Let me make it concrete. Meet Bill and Susan, both 70, no relation to me. They did everything right. They saved hard their whole careers and retired with $900,000, a paid-off house, and about $55,000 a year in combined Social Security. Their essential spending is about $45,000 a year. Look at that. Their Social Security alone, $55,000, already covers their essentials with 10 cents to spare before they touch $1 of the 900,000. And yet, they are terrified to spend. They pull almost nothing from savings. They skip the trips, drive the old car. They are, by any honest measure, completely financially safe, and they are living smaller than a couple with half their money. Here is where they are headed. With the market growing that 900,000 faster than they draw it, and RMDs not even forcing much out yet, their balance is on track to be well over $1 million by their 80s. They will die with more than they retired with, having never taken the trip they talked about for 30 years. Their fear did its job decades ago. It is now just costing them the best years they have left. Now meet Tom and Grace, same age, similar money. Same 900,000, same paid-off house, same Social Security covering their essentials. But Tom and Grace did the exercise. They confirmed their floor, essentials covered by Social Security, guaranteed for life. Then they looked at the 900,000 and asked the honest question, not how do we protect this forever, but what did we save it for? So they use a dynamic rule. In good years they take a little more, in down years a little less. They front-loaded a decade of real travel into their late 60s and early 70s while they are strong. They helped their son with a down payment and got to stand in the driveway of the house they made possible. They started small Roth conversions to keep the future tax bill low. Their balance still is not collapsing because their floor was never at risk and the surplus was always the plan. They will likely still leave a meaningful inheritance, just a somewhat smaller and much more tax-efficient one, and they will have actually lived the retirement they spent 40 years buying. Same money, same safety. One couple is haunted by a fear that already did its job. The other gave themselves permission. The only difference is that Tom and Grace ran the numbers and believed them. Let me turn this into something you can actually do, because permission you do not act on is just a nice feeling. 1. Find your floor. Add up your true essential spending for a year and look at your guaranteed income, Social Security plus any pension. If your guaranteed income covers your essentials, you have a floor, and that changes everything about how freely you can spend the rest. 2. Find your surplus. Look at your savings and your real, smile-shaped spending, not a flat, scary line. For a lot of careful savers, there is a gap, and the gap is money you are allowed to enjoy. 3. Pick one go year thing and actually book it. The trip, the gift, the help for your kid. One thing, this month, funded from the surplus, on purpose. 4. If you have a large pre-tax balance, ask a fee-only advisor about Roth conversions and RMD planning before 73, because the best time to defuse that tax bomb is in your low-income years, and those years are passing right now. I take running out of money seriously. I have made whole videos about it, and I will make more, because for the undersaved, it is the real and central danger. But that is exactly why you should trust me on the other side of it. For a huge number of careful, disciplined savers, running out was never going to happen. The real risk was always the quiet one, getting to the end with the trips untaken, the help ungiven, the years lived smaller than they ever needed to be, and a pile of money that the market grew and the government will divide. So do the honest exercise. Confirm your floor. And if the essentials are covered and the surplus is real, then hear this clearly, because you have spent a lifetime waiting for someone to say it. You are allowed to spend it. You earned it. That was the whole point. Run your numbers. Know you're on track. If this helped, tell us in the comments the one thing you would do if you truly believed the money was safe to spend. We read everyone. All figures in this video are illustrative and current as of 2026. 4% rule and safe withdrawal rates are debated guidelines, not guarantees, and running out of money is a real risk for those who have not saved enough. Tax rules, RMD ages, and inherited account rules change. Verify at irs.gov and ssa.gov, and talk to a fee-only advisor about your own situation. Susan Mitchell is the host of the Retirement Lab and is not a licensed financial advisor, attorney, or accountant.